The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday evening. Hope you're having a great weekend. I had a great day today. Today was a good day. Weather here was basically perfect, which means it was California-like weather. It was not very humid, not very hot, sun was shining, blue skies, just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day today in sunny Puerto Rico. So I know it's not that nice where many of you live. Sorry. It's rough. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about economics. We're going to be talking about some of the economic proposals coming out of the Biden administration. Minimum wage proposals, already an executive order about the minimum wage. Buy American proposals, basically accepting, expanding the Buy American policies of the Trump administration. And then the theme of Democrats these days and the theme of the Obama administration, spend money into prosperity. Let's just spend as much as we can. So we'll be talking about the voodoo pseudo-economics of Biden and of the left. Jonathan says voodoo. It sounds mystical. Yeah, it's completely mystical, completely detached from reality, completely primacy of consciousness, completely placing your whims above reality. It is complete fantasy. It's complete and utter nonsense. And I'm waiting one day for the show where I get to compliment some politician, president maybe, but politician, on his economic proposals, economic policies. Go find that politician. I can't see him. I mean, Mitt Romney just proposed this, putting together a new bill that is basically going to expand, I can't remember how much money, but it's like $250 or $500 per child for every child in the United States. The government just writes you a check. It decreases other tax stuff, other handouts, but just they all want to just hand money out. Just hand money out. They all think the government should run everything, run our lives, run our businesses, run our decisions, make choices, choose our values, all of them. It's just so depressing. So depressing. All right, so we're going to talk about minimum wage by Americans, spend. Now, don't forget, before you leave the show, to like the show. That always that helps algorithms. It's good for the show. The more likes we get, the better. Don't forget to share the shows you like with your friends. Get the word out there. It's how we grow. It's how we get new people to listen to the show. So please like, please share. And of course, I don't know. We've been kind of fading a little bit on Super Chat. I guess Derek or Alejandrina are not around to kind of bug you guys to use the Super Chat feature, so I'm going to have to do it. Don't forget to use the Super Chat both to support the show, to ask questions. It's great when we get some of those big Super Chat contributions. Value for value. If you get value from the show, please show your support like Jonathan just has. By contributing. I guess everybody's out of money because of the New Year's Eve show where we raised, $6,000 in one show. So I guess that I got it tapped everybody out. Everybody's like holding on to their money. But don't worry, Joe Biden is going to send you a $1,400 check soon. So all good. You all good. You can spend it on the Iran Book Show in advance. $1,400 stimulus checks accepted right here in advance. All right. Yes, you can also, of course, support your show on youronbookshow.com/support, on Patreon, locals, and Subscribe Star. Today, I have to tell you, today I went. So I'm getting a new place. I hope, waiting to get the mortgage finalized and everything. So we're buying a new place. And today we went to look at speakers for the new for the music system that I'm going to have in the new place. It was a blast. We had so much fun. We went to 3 different stores, listened to, I don't know, at least half a dozen different speakers, listened to different, I had 3-4 different classical music pieces that I was trying all the speakers out. Beethoven 7th, a couple of arias from La Traviata from Verdi, Rachmaninoff's piano concerto, Tchaikovsky's violin concerto, or Brahms's violin concerto. And it was a blast. Just sit there, flip from speaker to speaker, and try them different outs, and try different speakers out, and it was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. I love, Ian says don't get sucked into audiophile BS. I love the audiophile BS. What are you talking about? The audiophile BS is a blast. Now, yes, I know that the exact type of cable and the connection and this and that, what I love is just listening to different speakers and seeing the differences and what I like and what I don't like, but they're real differences. They're not all the same. There are real differences between, the sound characteristics of the different speakers, of the different amplifiers. It's real, and it's just fun to do, and it's fun to see what you like and what you don't like, and what aspects of things you like and you don't like, so I had a good stuff. Yes, as Ian says, there is BS audiophile stuff. Absolutely, my ears cannot hear the differences between cables, cannot hear the differences between a lot of things. But in terms of just the music and the delivery of the music, I mean, some speakers we listen to, like this Danish band, Dyna Audio, beautiful sound, but it's a little distant, and it's very laid back, and it's very relaxed, and you put on Beethoven 7th, and you want it to go like this. You want to go really fast and really intense and really exciting. And it's like, no, it's kind of everything's a little mellow. And I don't know exactly what it is about them. And then they put on this British speaker, and it was like, boom, boom. Everything was like rolling, and it was, for Beethoven, it was just perfect. It was like going to the races, which is the way I like Beethoven. Anyway, it was pretty cool, and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, that was a fun day, and got to have lunch outside in the sun, and just beautiful day to be out and about and listen to music and test out speakers. And I wish Ian, I had your ears, so I could choose the best speakers, but I have mine, so I guess I'll choose the best speakers for my ears. It is personal. I won't say subjective, because it's not subjective. It's personal, what you like. Anyway, I think we've narrowed it down to a speaker that we really liked, an exciting speaker, and now I just need to get the the other thing that is relevant to the show and relevant to your support by Super Chat is this one store that we went. They were like audiophiles. They were like these really guys that are really dedicated to quality of sound, and they were talking about, they had a lot of acoustical material on the walls. So I was talking to them about when I build the studio in the new place, how do we get the sound of this setup to be optimal? So we're going to be putting some acoustical material on ceilings. We're going to be putting acoustical material on the walls, and so we're going to dedicated some real resources, a couple of $1,000s, maybe more, to making the room really, really acoustical friendly. And then they'll also fine tune. I have a lot of equipment here. They'll fine tune the equipment so that we get, the best sound possible for this, for what we do here. So that'll affect you. And of course, the money for that will come from your support. So think about the support that you give me is to a large extent going to, or some extent at least, going to significantly improving the sound for the Yaron Brook Show, both on these live shows and on the podcast, on the tape shows. All right, let's jump into minimum wage. I want to start with the minimum wage. I've talked about it before. I want to talk about it from a slightly different angle this time. And I do want to show you a video of Rational National, one of these leftists who is a little dull, a little boring, I have to say, but kind of, I think, articulates what a lot of leftists think about the proposal. So there is, you've got Biden basically signing an executive, what do you call it, an executive thing to raise the minimum wage to $15 for contractors, government contractors, and people who work for the government or get paid by the government. Now that's a larger and larger group of companies. As the government grows, as it spends more money, it has more and more subcontracts. That has already an economic effect, although small. Second, he is proposing as part of this big stimulus package, and I think Schumer and Pelosi have already proposed this in Congress, an increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. $15 an hour. And then, so those are the proposals on the table. As you'll see, many on the left view this as just the beginning. Just the beginning. So I want to deal with that proposal first, and then we'll go to Buy America, and then we'll go to Spend, and then we'll try to integrate them all into what is the common theme. What is it about all of these that is driving this voodoo economics? What makes it voodoo, right? All right, let's see. So I'm going to start with a video, right, of Rational National, well, really Irrational National. Irrational National talking about the minimum wage. And he calls it, this is the title of the video, Democrats Introduce Embarrassing Minimum Wage Bill. Why is it embarrassing? We'll find out. Wrong button. There we go. Unmuted.
Democrats have introduced an inadequate and frankly embarrassing minimum wage bill.
I agree. Inadequate and embarrassing. Yeah.
Now, in this video, I'm going to break down what is in this bill, what has been passed already, what Joe Biden has done, and also where the minimum wage would be if it were tied to productivity. But before I get to all that, let me first start with what Joe Biden has done. So this is an executive order that he pushed a few days ago, signing an executive order to pass a $15 minimum wage for federal workers. Now, this is to and also our news rights here. Just in, House and Senate Democrats introduced legislation to raise the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 by 2025.
Doubling the minimum wage.
Now, there are a couple things here. Let me start with how Democrats already are coming to the table with the compromise. I wrote this on Twitter. This is essentially my notes here on this piece, so I'll just read this out. But I say here, putting aside how inadequate this is, if Democrats actually wanted to pass this, they wouldn't come to the table with the compromise. They'd come with $15 an hour by the summer and have Republicans water it down to $15 an hour by 2025.
So note, the problem is that the bill introduces the minimum wage, over a few years, and they want it now. And of course, if you're going to get it, why not negotiate with the Republicans? Because Republicans are going to give in, right? Probably. So the Republicans offer the 2025, and that way Democrats can look good, right? Because they tried to fight for. So he's giving them a little bit of political recommendations on how to get a higher and better minimum wage. Note it, no equivocation about the fact that minimum wage, raising the minimum wage is a good, important, crucial thing to do. And of course, 15 is just the beginning. Whoops.
Democrats should be coming to the table with $20
$20
an hour.
an hour.
So this is just how you negotiate.
And I always wonder, why 20? How did we get to 20? Like, what's the calculation behind 20 and not 1950 or 2750? I mean, if raising the minimum wages costs less, if raising the minimum wage doesn't hurt anybody, it only helps the people who used to earn a minimum wage and now earning a much higher minimum wage, then why not raise it to 50 or 100 or 500? Why not? All right, let's keep going. I keep pressing the wrong button. I apologize.
Don't come to the table with a watered-down bill. Now, part of the issue here is that this is the exact same bill that was passed in 2019 through the democratically controlled House. The Senate, of course, did not take it up.
They keep trying.
But they are simply reintroducing the same bill that was passed in the House 2 years ago to try and get it through with the now democratically controlled Senate, with Kamala Harris being the tie-breaking vote. Now, the other issue, of course, is that they need 60 votes unless they pass it through budget reconciliation, which is something they will try and do. If they don't get those 60 votes, this gets back to the issue. Of course, Democrats are not going to get discussion, negotiate down to whatever your position is.
Yeah.
But to come to the table with this very conservative compromise already.
Notice, $15 an hour is conservative, and $15 an hour by 2025, 4 years. Conservative. I mean, it's doubling the minimum wage. And by the way, if the minimum wage was, I wrote this down somewhere, let me just find this. If the minimum wage had been adjusted from its highest rate ever in terms of to the PCE, which is the consumer expenditure deflator. So it's the most recognized inflation deflator that you want to use. The 725 today would be 920. 920. By the way, one of the tricks that economists play on all of us when they throw numbers at you, oh, wages haven't gone up or down or sideways or whatever, inflation adjusted, is the measure they use to adjust inflation. There are a lot of different measures you can use, and they'll give you different results because they're different measures. And of course, each side uses the measures that'll give them the best outcome. Now, the PCE is most economists accept it as the best measure, the most accurate measure. But no inflation measure is accurate. No inflation measure is good because every one of our inflations is different in terms of prices because your basket of goods is different than my basket of goods. So if your basket of goods have gone up in price faster than mine, you have more inflation, price inflation than I do. For example, if you consume primarily education and healthcare, prices have gone through the roof for you. If you primarily consume computers and food, prices have gone down dramatically. So inflation is a very tricky number, and it's one that economists use often to lie to you, to deceive you. Right? So beware. Whenever quoting inflation-adjusted numbers, what inflation? What deflator are you using? What if I used a different deflator? How much does it change? But according to the PCE, 920 should be the minimum wage today. Right? 920. And they want to raise it not to 920 from 725. They want to double it to $15 an hour. They want to completely utter free lunch. They've invented a free lunch. All right, let's listen to it's inadequate. Yada. We know it's inadequate. Let's go. I want to get into some of his other arguments. Let's see what is he arguing here.
Now, this isn't the only issue with this bill. As if you look through it here, after the first 4 years, so once it raises to $15 an hour, it is then tied to the median hourly wage increase. So instead of tying it to inflation or tying it to productivity, which I would prefer, I'm going to show you later how much you would be making right now if it were tied to productivity, they're tying it to median hourly wage. So now why is this an issue? Well, looking at EPI.org here, again, I'll link to all this below the video. You can read through all this data yourself. They write here, the 95th percentile continues to pull away from middle and low wage workers. Cumulative change in real hourly wages of workers by a wage percentile, 1979 to 2019.
Now notice here, first, all this is inflation adjusted and we don't know what the deflator is, but put that aside. Notice also that here he's separating out the 10th, 15th, and 95th percentiles. This is going to be important when we get to productivity. And he's showing here that real wages, again, what real means depends on what you use as the inflation adjusted. Real wages of low-income workers have basically remained flat. They've grown 3.3%, while higher-end workers, higher wage workers, it goes up by 63%. So people who earned a lot at the top 95th percentile in 1980 earn 63% more today. And the equivalent job, the people in the 95th percentile. Remember, it's not the same jobs. The people who are in the 95th percentile in 1980 are not the same people, not the same jobs as the people in jobs that today. But this is what economists do. They aggregate everything up, they mush it all together, and then they give you statistics as if it's meaningful. Now, what is true, though, is it's likely that a lot of the jobs at the lower 10th percent of income are the same as they were 40 years ago. That is, it is likely that the kind of job that earned you a minimum wage or just above a minimum wage, that is the bottom 10%, in 1980 is about the same kind of job as today. What kind of job would that be? I don't know. A fast food restaurant worker, textile worker, the kind of manual labor that is relatively simple, that does not require a lot of training, does not require a lot of skill, does not require any education. That kind of job is the bottom 10%. So why do wages go up over time? Why would you expect wages to be higher in the future than they are today? Well, because your productivity goes up in the future. And how does productivity go up? Well, because you either get better skilled, you get better educated, or you have better machines, better robots, better computers, better equipment to work. So capital is being invested to make you more productive. So the way your productivity goes up is either through education, acquiring skills, training, all of these things, or capital investment. Now notice that where have we seen a lot of improvement that would lead to growth in productivity? We've seen that in the higher end jobs that relate to manufacturing, jobs that relate to services, but high-end services like programming. In fast food chains, flipping burgers, you haven't gotten more productive. So why should you get paid more? Let me say that again. You haven't gotten more productive. Do people today flip more burgers than they did 40 years ago? Does the cashier, the person at the cash register, collect more money, handle more people in line than he or she could 40 years ago? Probably not. I mean, maybe at the margin, wages have gone up 3.3% according to this, which I don't really trust, but let's assume these numbers are true. Whereas in any higher skill job, your productivity because of technology has gone up significantly since 1980, and therefore your wages have gone up significantly since 1980. And again, this is not your wages. This is average wages of the top 95, which could be completely different people today, completely different jobs. What has happened over the last 40 years is we have dramatically automatized, we have dramatically increased the use of computers. Where? In some jobs. Those jobs are getting much more rewarded because their productivity has gone up. And McDonald's, it hasn't. But, so, linking it to the median is giving the minimum wage employees the increases based on the productivity of somebody else. The productivity of the median worker, which is significantly higher than the minimum wage worker. The fact is, the minimum wage workers, how many people work in year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for a minimum wage? Almost zero, almost nobody. Minimum wage is something you pay somebody when they first start, when their productivity is less is the minimum wage. Less than a minimum wage, right? Sorry, just slightly more than the minimum wage. That's why you wouldn't even pay them the minimum wage. But as they get trained on the job, their productivity rises and their wages rise. But there's always a group of people, teenagers, ex-cons, ex-drug addicts, just people hot up, people who got through a lousy, horrific educational system. They don't know anything. They're not productive. There's always a group of people that enters at the minimum wage. And that minimum wage should only increase if their, not productivity, if their productivity has gone up. So, I mean, the way they present it, the way they report statistics, and the way they imply the statistics have meaning to what they're talking about is just ignorant of economics in such a fundamental way. It really is quite shocking. All right.
So if you look at this graph, the top increase here is from the 95th percentile. This right here is the median.
Yeah.
So now at 15.1%. This is the median wage increase, the 50th percentile. Now, explaining this further, to put this growth and inequality in perspective, consider that the 10th percentile wage grew from $9.75 to $10.07 an hour. Over this 40-year period, wages for this group increased only 32 cents in real inflation-adjusted terms.
How are they adjusting?
The median wage grew...
I bet you they're using the inflation adjuster that will give them the best outcome, not the one that most reflects actual inflation. It looks like I'm barely gonna get through any voodoo economics today, just because I've got so much to say, it turns out. All right.
From 1679 to 1933, an increase of only $2.54. At the top, the 95th percentile wage grew from $41.15 to $67.14, an increase of $25.99 an hour.
Why is that?
This is the major difference here. You have by tying the increase after 4 years to the median wage, over the last 40 years, you've only seen an increase here of $2.54 in the median wage.
Yeah.
Now, tying it to productivity, as I'm going to show you, would make a hell of a lot more sense.
Here's productivity, guys.
So
now
the gap
this
between productivity and
now remember, I did a whole show on this graph. This graph is a manufactured lie. It is an unmitigated lie. Now, if you don't remember my discussion about this graph, and I had a number of different points why this is complete distortion, go back and watch that show. Just put your unbook productivity, and maybe Action Jackson can release that video again as an adjunct to this video. But this shows hourly compensation flattening out and productivity going through the roof. This is a complete and utter distortion. Now, I want to go back. Wait. I want to go back to, where's the graph? One second. There, I want to go back to this graph a second. because I forgot to say something about this graph. One of the things that this graph does not recognize is what has grown since 1980 that is not captured on this graph that affects the compensation of workers. And this drives me nuts because, again, this is so dishonest of these people. And I purposefully using these people, right? These leftists who don't know any economics, have no conception of what it means to think economically, have no understanding of how economics works, and who pretend to throw out graphs and numbers and pretend that they're conveying information, all for some fantasy, some illusion that they live under, that there's a free lunch. And all driven really by the hatred of this group, the group at the top, right? What is missing from the graph? Well, there's quite a bit missing, but one of the important things that are missing are benefits. Benefits. Benefits have become a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger part of compensation every decade. Health insurance, all the other coverages, all the other stuff that employers are required to provide to you. That whole laundry list, if you're an employer, that you know that you have to provide your employees. But healthcare is certainly a big one. Now, as a percentage, as that is massive, all these required by law, as a percentage, this is huge for low-income employees. Because the benefits might be 25% of their wages. They might be more than 25% of their wages. So as benefits increase, yes, employers have less and less money to give them cash in salary. So what you see is, you see the salary only go up 3.3%. But if you included benefits, their wages would be going up far, far higher. Significantly higher, as to start catching up to the median and to the high-income people. And if you look at the high-income people's increase, right, they have benefits there as well. But their benefits are a much smaller percentage of their compensation. So if you add benefit to their compensation, it will increase the amount they raised of their raises, but not by much. Whereas for the low income, it would be huge. So if you wanted to fix this graph, just include benefits in it. That would be one way to fix it. The inflation the deflator is another way to fix it, but there are other ways and so on. Somebody's asking what the solution is. The solution is to have a zero minimum wage, but I'll get to that.
A hell of a lot more sense.
Again, this is a completely false graph. The hourly compensation, they use a different deflator on that than on productivity. So they're using two different deflators to maximize the difference. That's one thing. In hourly compensation, they're not including benefits. That's another thing. Whose hourly compensation are they using? Hourly compensation of whom? Is this the top people? Is this the bottom people? Is this the average? Is it the median? Is it what is it? Is it of any particular worker as he goes through his life cycle? I mean, they are so dishonest. And the reason they have to be dishonest, there's a reason they have to be dishonest. The reason they have to be dishonest is because their ideas are so detached from reality. Their solutions are so illogical from an economic perspective that they have to invent data. They have to lie through their teeth about the data in order to try to convince anybody. Because there's no logic, there's no economics, there's no reason behind what they're proposing. Now, he wants to link increases in the minimum wage to increases in productivity. You see right here. Now, what's the problem with that? Because wages should be linked to productivity. and I'm gonna shift away from this because it pisses me off. What's the problem with that? The problem with it is wages are supposed to be linked to productivity. Your wages are supposed to be linked to your productivity. His wages are supposed to link to his productivity. When your productivity goes up, your wages should go up. And if they don't, you should change jobs. His wages should go up when his productivity goes up. But if my productivity goes up and your productivity doesn't go up, why should your wage go up? So if Rational National wants to link a specific individual's wage to that individual's increase in productivity, that's exactly how the market works. That's what happens in a proper marketplace, in a free market. But he wants to link unproductive people, minimum wage people who have never had a job before, people just entering the job market. He wants to link their wages to my productivity. To my productivity. Not to that person's productivity, but to mine. How does that make sense? Why should the fact that Stephanie has got a brand new computer and therefore can produce at a far, far higher rate than she used to, and therefore is earning a lot more money than she used to, what does that have to do with a low wage, with a minimum wage employee? Why is his wage linked to Stephanie's productivity? His wage should be linked to his productivity. That's the other fallacy that is very prevalent in economics. And that is the aggregation fallacy, or the collectivist fallacy. Economics is fundamentally about you and me. It's about individuals. How we produce, how we get compensated, how we consume, the incentives we have, why we switch jobs, who becomes entrepreneurs, what entrepreneurs do. It's about individual action in a marketplace. That's what economics should study. But what economists today like to do is they like to aggregate all these individuals and just have numbers, the bottom quartile, the top quartile, the median, the average. Who cares? What matters is your wage. What matters is your productivity. What matters is that firm's profitability, that firm's profit, whether you're consuming their product or their product. Economics is not rocket science. It's not easy, particularly when you get into the real deep end. But this is just what Rational National and what so many of the leftist economists do is just a con job. And this is Paul Krugman, and this is Robert Reich, and this is the whole slew of them. The whole slew of them. Now, Janet Yellen, take Janet Yellen, who I think also, gets suckered into this, but she's a better economist than most. I think it's Janet Yellen wrote an op-ed once about the minimum wage. And she basically said the minimum wage doesn't work, because some people get the raise and other people lose their jobs. And she goes through the whole economic logic. And then she said, but look, we want to raise working people's salaries. So I'm for them raising the minimum wage because I want to now, but I realize that there's all these negative impacts. At least she understands, or at least is willing to say, that the trade-offs. But these people want to pretend. Again, this is why it's voodoo economics. It's economics detached from reality. That there are no trade-offs. There are no costs. You can just raise people's minimum wage and no cost. So let's get quickly into the costs involved in minimum wage. And here again, as usual, when it comes to economics, not that I didn't know this stuff, but he always puts it very well and very succinctly. I rely on John Cochrane, the grumpy economist, for a lot of the insights and a lot of the debate. So, the one argument about a minimum wage, which I made in the past, which is should be obvious to anybody who studied Economics 101, is that when you raise the cost of a good, demand for it shrinks. When you raise the minimum wage, unemployment grows. That's just a fact. And hundreds, if not thousands, of studies in economics have shown that that actually is a reality. There are a couple of studies that are more ambiguous. They use these small samples. You know, it goes to this idea of using statistics well and knowing how to evaluate a study and what studies are worthwhile and what are not. But again, people like Paul Krugman, who don't care anymore about reality, will take the one or two or three studies and present them as if they're the definitive word, they're the only important thing, that they explain everything about the world, and they show that there's no employment effect for the raising the minimum wage, even though Paul Krugman knows that's BS. He's willing to lie for political agenda. He is a liar. But the economic literature is not equivocal about this. This is not questionable. And if you want to understand the dynamics of this, if you want to understand the dynamics of most of these issues in economics, I highly, highly, highly recommend my favorite book in economics, which is Economics in One Lesson. Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt is by far the best. It's relatively easy read. He takes real principles, he concretizes them in real examples. It was written in 1947. It could have been written yesterday. Same problems, same issues, same examples as you would use today. Shocking. And by the way, this would go against Biden and Trump and the entire scope of the statists out there who think that central planning is the way to run an economy. What is seen or was unseen is really Bastiat. Hazlitt, you know, is riffing off of Bastiat. All right. So let's take this one issue. Let's put that aside, which is employment of people who produce at less than $15 an hour disappears. And those people lose their jobs, and the people who need the jobs most, the people who can least afford to lose the job, are the ones who lose the job or the ones that never get hired. Raising the minimum wage is a way to institutionalize people into unemployment, to fix them into unemployment forever. Not to mention unemployment, $15 an hour in Seattle is different than $15 an hour in Mississippi. The cost of living in Mississippi is such that a minimum wage of $7.25 can buy you a lot more than $7.25 in Seattle. So having a national minimum wage is insanity. And at $15 an hour, it would destroy the economies of the center of the United States. It would do wreak havoc on those economies. Now, who are the people who earn a minimum wage? And I'll just list you what John Cochran lists. Some are young people, young kids, who need some slack from employers as they learn about showing up on time and being polite to customers. Some are ex-cons, recovering drug addicts, homeless, needing a job so they can pay rent. Or others with a spotty record, needing an employer who will take a chance on them. Some are recent immigrants who don't speak English very well or don't understand the American workplace culture. Many have complex family responsibilities, which means they can't take a high-paid job with more rigid schedules. They need the flexibility that a minimum wage job gives them. Some are old people with health problems, and they have Social Security and Medicare, but they want a little extra cash. Like Walmart greeters. You see the older people as Walmart greeters. But a small number, a tiny number, relatively speaking, and one that is shrinking over time, are the kind of people Democrats always bring out for their altruistic arguments. They're the sole breadwinner of a family with children who have to get child care and can only and has to work 8-hour shifts, and it's it's really, really difficult for them, and they can barely make a living. And they can. I mean, I can't imagine how somebody lives on a minimum wage if they have a kid and they're paying childcare. Wow, right? But that's a tiny fraction of the people who make minimum wage. And if that was the issue, if all these leftists wanted to do was help the single mother or single father who has kids and can't cope, what would they do? If they really just wanted to help them, and accepting statism, accepting that the state should do anything about it, what would they do? Well, much healthier, much simpler, much more straightforward, much less destructive is give them a check. Raise taxes and give them a check on that small fraction of a percent that really can't survive because they have all these other problems. Right? Now, I'm not advocating for that. Don't come to me and say Iran's now for the welfare state. I'm just saying that if that was what they wanted, if that was the goal, and if they were willing to be honest with the American people, they would say, we're going to raise your taxes a little bit, and these are the people we're helping. But you see, it's much easier for them to pass on the cost to businesses. Not to be the bad guys. Oh, no. I'm not the bad guy. I'm not raising your taxes. I'm going to get evil businessmen. They're going to pay you more. And we know that those restaurant owners, who are raking it in during COVID. I mean, raking the money in. It's just flowing in. They're making so much money hand over fist during COVID, the restaurant owners. They can afford to pay their workers more. I mean, it's so disgusting. And of course, the American people go, yeah, okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, those businesses, they should pay more. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, where's that money going to come from? Are the products going to become more expensive? Yeah. Who consumes those products? Who consumes the products of minimum wage workers? Minimum wage workers? Or low-income workers? So their cost of living goes up? But you see, leftist economics is not about helping the poor. Let me say that again. Leftist economics is not about helping the poor. I mean, if the left really cared about helping the poor, I mean, again, granting statism, then they'd support, a guaranteed minimum income. They'd support getting rid of all these welfare programs and just writing a check to people. They would support a negative income tax, where people who work, who don't make below a certain amount, get a supplement, get cash. But so much of their policies are not about helping the poor. They're about appearing to help the poor. They're about selling themselves as helping the poor. But they're really about hurting the productive, destroying the productive. I mean, those restaurant owners who barely survived COVID now have to pay a $15 minimum wage? Where do these politicians live? How do they think the world functions? Now, what are employers actually going to do when the minimum wage goes up? Who are they going to hire? Well, what's going to happen is that employers are going to become more discriminating. They're going to engage more rigorously in racial, ethnic, gender, age, sexual orientation, and other forms of illegal discrimination. They'll just kick out anybody they don't like because they can't live up to $15 an hour. Indeed, why was the minimum wage first imposed? It was first imposed during the large migration of blacks from the South to the North. And it was advocated for by unions who didn't want the blacks taking their jobs and who made sure to set the wage so high as to keep them out. Remember, the blacks came from the South. They were less educated. They had less training. They were eligible for minimum wage. They were coming into the most basic, simple work. But if you raise the wage on that work, that's an easy way to cut out the people who are less educated, more problematic, have bad backgrounds, all of that stuff. That gets discriminated against. It's funny because middle class and rich kids, they work for free. It's called an internship. But we don't allow poor kids to work for free. And we don't allow poor kids to work for a minimum wage of $7.25. They have to work for a $15 minimum wage. And at a $15 minimum wage, many people will not employ them. So the minimum wage is really meant to encourage, or in other words, to force employers to be more picky about who they hire. It benefits the few who are already good workers and can put up with a harder, less flexible schedule. Fewer other benefits and so on. By the way, one of the things that happens when you raise the minimum wage is benefits shrink. They only provide the very bare minimum. They have to. It hurts many more than it helps. All the people who are looking for a second chance, all the people who are truly struggling to start out in life, to get that first job, they're the ones who get decimated and destroyed. And of course, it hurts small businesses more than it hurts big businesses. McDonald's will survive, even if you raise the minimum wage. Will the taco stand? Will the food truck? Will the corner restaurant? Probably not. And that'll only drive more customers to McDonald's who benefit from this. It also creates a massive incentive. It already exists in the American economy, but will exist even more, for what's called a black market. An unregulated, uncontrolled market in which people work, don't declare, don't pay taxes, in which conditions might be horrific, where employees have very few options, but where they actually get compensated for their productivity. And if their productivity is only $8 an hour, they only get $8 an hour. They don't get 15. So the more you put in price controls, this is true of cigarettes, it's true of alcohol, it's true of drugs, wherever you limit the supply or you limit the demand, a black market arises. And what this drives is a black market in labor. A black market in labor, which now mostly constitute illegal immigrants, but is going to be broadened to anybody who can't work, who can't produce at $15 an hour. Labor and productivity. A minimum wage, raising the minimum wage for a business is entirely the same as a payroll tax on low-skilled labor. But you see, government doesn't want to be perceived as raising taxes on the poor. It doesn't want to be perceived as raising taxes on small businesses. Certainly doesn't want to be seen as raising payroll taxes. So they pretend it's not a tax. They pretend it's a free lunch. They pretend it's made manna from heaven to benefit the poor. But it's an illusion, It's made up. Now, one of the things I like about John Cochran is he never gets so focused on one issue, forgets the context. And one of the contexts that it's important to think about when you think about the minimum wage is that the minimum wage is only one among thousands, and I mean thousands, of distortions that the government creates in labor markets. Occupational licensing, mandated benefits, comparable worth laws, hours in terms of services, tip rules. There are all kinds of rules about tipping, perverse taxation, high payroll taxes and income taxes. Just think of the growth in companies all across America, in HR departments and compliance departments. That's where the real growth is. Think about all the union-friendly laws. And think about that not just at the federal level. Think about it at the state level, at the local level. And you can see that there are thousands and thousands of regulations that affect every business because they affect every employer-employee relationship. Now, some states are a little better than others. It's easier in terms of labor regulations to be in business in Florida than it is in California. Regulation is not great in Texas. There's a lot of regulation in Texas. Taxes might be low, regulations are high. That we shouldn't just be fighting the minimum wage. We should be fighting to eliminate all these things. Reduce their impact. Zero them out. And this is my big complaint about Republicans. Okay, they didn't raise the minimum wage. Good for them. But why didn't they get rid of occupational licensing laws and mandated benefits and comparable worth laws and hours and all this other stuff? Why didn't they reform entitlements so we could reduce payroll taxes? What about the union-friendly laws that could have been eliminated? And you could go on and on and on. All the deregulation that was supposedly done by Trump, none of it related to these things. And notice that Biden, in just a few strokes of the pen with some executive orders, is wiping out most of the deregulation that Trump did. As I said, if you don't go through legislation, it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. And I know Democrats control, even when the Republicans controlled the Senate, the House, they didn't have a veto. They didn't have the 60 votes in the Senate. But you can do all kinds of things. You can negotiate all kinds of stuff. You can get Democratic votes. You can give them something on immigration and in exchange get something on labor laws. You can give them something on something they want and get something you want. Politics is doable. When you believe in something and when it's something you want to fight. So minimum wage is bad. But all these other laws, worse. And all this raises the cost of hiring people, increases unemployment, lowers wages, and lowers growth, lowers job creation, lowers entrepreneurship, lowers economic success. All right, I am wondering, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there. Today will be minimum wages. Tomorrow, we've got a show tomorrow. I'll do Buy America, spend, and wrap up kind of the leftist theory of economics, the leftist approach to economics, which unfortunately Republicans share to a large extent. So we'll do the rest of the economics tomorrow because we've already gone an hour and we just did minimum wage. And I'd like to spend some time on the Buy America because the Buy America, of course, is one the Democrats and Republicans agree. Right? The executive order that Biden signed was just a nudge of an executive order that Trump had signed earlier. And anyway, we'll talk about it tomorrow. So I'm going to shift to super chat question. We got a few on economics and then some other stuff that we'll do. But in the meantime, I just want to remind you that you can, that you should like the show. Please press the like button. It really helps. Really, really appreciate that if you like the show. Don't forget to share shows that you like. If you like a show in economics, then share it. Share it with your friends. And then if you want to support the show, best way to do that is by monthly support. YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals. But you can also support the show like Michael does very generously. I might add through the Super Chat over many, many shows. I mean, my Super Chat would be, Michael basically makes it every time on Super Chat here. All right, let's do some of these. Let's do some of these economic questions. Have Western mixed economies proven more resilient than Ayn Rand predicted? With the brutal COVID lockdowns and money printing, is it unbelievable how wealthy and high functioning we still are? Yes, I think Western mixed economies have proven more resilient than any of us expect, and they keep doing that, particularly the United States. And now you have to remember that Western economies went through a change in the 1980s. They drifted towards greater free markets, more reliance on market, less government spending as a percentage of GDP at least. Look at the Swedish economy, the Canadian economy. Many of the economies in Europe shifted. Even France, that flirted with socialism in the early part of the 80s, was flirting with market reforms by the time we got into the 90s. The United States had Ronald Reagan. The United Kingdom had Margaret Thatcher. And on top of that, and maybe this is the most underappreciated thing, particularly among the people who like Trump, the most underappreciated thing in the world today, and that is that China came on board. Southeast Asia came on board as much more market economies in many respects than the West was. And their productivity increase benefited us enormously because we became the consumers of the products that they created. First it was Japan, then it was South Korea, Taiwan, where chips are made. Chips, not chips, but chips in computers are made. A lot of technology is made in Taiwan. But Singapore and Hong Kong and even Thailand and of course then China. But the West benefited enormously. So part of the resilience of the West is that we have a lot more people to trade with. I know that after COVID, everybody thinks we need to make everything in America. This is for tomorrow's show. Right? But no, what we've proven to ourselves is we need even more elaborate, more diversified supply chains. We shouldn't rely maybe so much on China, but we shouldn't replace China with America, because in America people get sick, they stay home, and we shut down industries and we shut down the economy, and we can't get stuff out of Americans. But maybe if we had more plants in Vietnam, in Taiwan, in Africa, in South America, in a variety of different places. So one of the things that's so underappreciated is the benefits of global trade, of low tariffs, even in a world where they cheat. The benefits of all these countries coming online and producing, and how resilient the private sector is within the mixed economies. But let me tell you that if we did not have China and Southeast Asia, in a sense, coming online in the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s, your standard of living, your quality of life, your wealth would be dramatically lower. The ability of the U.S. economy to deal with COVID, the ability of the U.S. economy to deal with financial crisis would have been significantly reduced. Significantly reduced. Trade deficits are wonderful things. Wonderful things. And only sustainable as long as the United States maintains a decent economy so that people want to invest here, which is what ultimately drives trade deficits. So yes, mixed economies are being more resilient, partially because the free market reforms they went through in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and partially because of the rest of the world coming online, and partially because entrepreneurs and businessmen are amazingly resilient. I'm looking for $20 questions that are economics in nature. Econ shows are some of my favorites. The productivity graph depictions shocked me. I've seen that graph in my lectures. Have we not seen inflation because the money is going overseas, Amazon going to Chinese products? The reason you don't see price inflation, even though money is being printed or has been printed, is because not so much, some of the money is going abroad and staying abroad and not coming back into our economy. But think about what would have happened if we kept the money supply even and China and Southeast Asia coming on board. Productivity in China and Southeast Asia are going up way higher than the graph you saw before, dramatically spiking. What would that cause prices to do? Prices in the US should have come tumbling down. That is, we should have seen prices in the US come down significantly. So because the government printed so much money, prices didn't go down. And in some industries went up, but didn't go down. So on average, we didn't see maybe an increase in prices. But in an environment where we should have seen a decrease in prices, printing of money actually caused prices to stay stable. And that's how inflation manifested itself. Now, there were other issues about inflation. It went into asset prices. Some of the money printed sat in the Federal Reserve vaults, basically, as reserves held by the banks, so it didn't circulate. The multiplier effect was not quite prevalent. So there are a lot of reasons why we have not had inflation. But a big part of it is dramatic productivity increases in other countries. Like housing, medicine, and education are the only places where you've seen dramatic increases in prices other than financial assets. So asset prices have gone up, but actually goods that you purchase have stayed fairly flat. And if you take out the effect of China, if you'd taken out the effect of the increase in money, prices would have come down significantly. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm just going to go over the non-$20 ones to see which ones are. Introduced my cousin to your video on Chinese sweatshops. He loved it. Said out of all the short videos he has seen on business-related videos, yours was the most easy to understand and made the most sense. Great. Now he needs to do the longer stuff, right? Because you can only go so far with that short video. Let's see. Other studies that claim to show that increasing the minimum wage has no negative impact on jobs done dishonestly. No, but they're not good studies. So the studies that were done that show that it has no negative impact are small samples. They don't control for things that should be controlled. They're in particular localities, and they don't take into account the idiosyncrasies of those localities. So they're not well-designed studies. That's the problem. Whether that's honest or dishonest, hard to tell. Could be just incompetence on the part of both the people who did the studies and the people who reviewed them for publication in journals. But again, overwhelmingly, studies show negative impacts of unemployment, and negative impacts of raising the minimum wage. Overwhelmingly so. Let me just say, the reason the 15-minute minimum wage hasn't destroyed cities is because everyone is working off the books. Yeah, a lot of people working off the books. A lot of jobs are moving out of the cities that raised those minimum wages. A lot of those places are in high cost of living places where very few people were earning minimum wage, where already wages were higher. So, and even there, they had negative impact. So the Seattle minimum wage increase, most of the studies show, did have a negative impact. Again, if it has no minimum impact, why not raise it to 100 or 1,000 or whatever? All right. Let's take, I'm just going to do the the $20 ones, and then we'll do the non-$20 ones. Okay, so intellectuals at universities hate nationalism. How is it that nationalism is becoming a force in the culture if all cultural forces ultimately come from the intellectuals? Well, because nationalism is a backlash against the intellectuals. And it is still a product of intellectuals. So the movement towards nationalism is guided by a significant group of right-wing intellectuals. They are the minority. It's not true that a majority of the intellectuals dictate the terms of what happens. And this, again, goes to Leonard Peikoff's dim hypothesis. I know I always come back to it because I think it's an incredibly important work and incredibly significant, so I come back to this. The intellectuals at universities who hate nationalism offer nothing in its place. They offer no integrating principle. They offer disintegration. They offer a cognitive mess. They offer no ability to think, to solve problems, to deal with the world, to deal with issues. They're completely disintegrated. And nationalism as an integrating force is something they dismiss. As Leonard explains in the dim hypothesis, again, I never do this justice, but as he explains, the human mind requires integration. It requires seeing order among the chaos. It's no accident Jordan Peterson makes a big deal about chaos. He's right. Chaos is destruction. Chaos is the abyss. Chaos is psychologically frightening. It's damaging. It's scary. It's incomprehensible. It's unmanageable. We can't survive with chaos. We need order, cognitive order. That order can be attained through integration around a true principle, a true idea, reason, rationality. Or it can be integrated around a false idea, God, the nation, the race. And indeed, even on the left, some attempts to integrate around the race, but even there it's fragmented. Critical race theory fragments the human race. It doesn't really build cohesiveness, even among all blacks, because even among blacks, they're not one unit. There are a variety of different units, variety of different subgroups, depending on how oppressed they happen to be. Maybe how dark their skin is, or whether they're male or female, and then it gets into intersectionality. The whole thing is about disintegration. On the left, there's no integrating principle anymore. Marx attempted an integrating principle. But today's left has no integrating principle. They've abandoned Marx in that sense. So what the right is offering is an integrating principle. And at the end, what Peikoff says is that people will gravitate towards the integration, the false one, and abandon the disintegration. Now, the rush towards this false integration is going to be a response to the intellectuals. So it'll still be guided by the intellectuals, by bouncing it off of them, in a sense, as an anti, right? As an anti. But it's still them. Without them, it wouldn't happen. All right. Now, what makes objectivism unique, and the Enlightenment unique, and Aristotle and the Greeks unique, is that they integrated around a proper principle, around the principle of reason. Whether they did a good enough job, obviously they didn't. But if that is the right kind of integration, and that's what allowed them to be successful and allowed them to win, is that it was integrated, and it was right. And objectivism is Greece, Enlightenment. It's the inherent of that integrating tradition. Not as a tradition, of course. All right, let's see. Are most conservatives still Platonic in their orientation, in viewing most people as too stupid to be left free to act on their judgment? Not as bad as the left, but the idea of leaving man fully free is still out of the question for them. Yes, there's no question. And I don't know if it's not as bad as the left. I don't know if it's not as bad as the left. Right? The only thing the right believes that the common man should be entrusted with is a gun. Other than that, we don't trust him with anything else. Right? So, yes, there's a big problem of Platonism, of philosopher kings, of trying to tell people how to live. There's a big portion of conservatives who advocate for religion, not because they believe in religion, but because they think that people need religion in order to have morality. They don't trust people not to have religion. And that's Platonic. That's from their Platonic views. I think that still exists among conservatives. It's certainly among the left. And not around all conservatives, but certainly among a group. The neocons certainly have aspects of that. But so do the Trumpist-like conservatives who want to guide us. I mean, look at the Tucker Carlson conservatives. They don't trust us. They don't trust individuals to make their own decisions. Not unless they're guided by religion, then maybe we trust you because you're guided by an external force. I understand why anti-Semitism took off in Europe, but why did it in the United States? I mean, for very similar reasons. A remnant from religion, a distrust of finance, which is in the founding, in Thomas Jefferson, really in the founding, in the way they regulated banks and the way they controlled finance. And a need to blame the other for problems. And it's why anti-Semitism is on the rise today, because collectivism and tribalism are on the rise, and anti-Semitism is a phenomenon of collectivism and tribalism. So it's not super surprising that as the United States becomes more like Europe, adopts more of both the left and the right's attitudes from Europe, the right becoming more culturally nationalist, central planning right. Really, the right today admires Poland, it admires Hungary, it admires Marie Le Pen in France. They admire the European right. And of course, the left has always been enamored with the left in Europe. It's not surprising that as America becomes more like Europe in sense of life, in attitude towards what you can and cannot do, what is independence, what the state can and cannot govern in terms of your life, as the state becomes more dominant, as people's sense of life and attitudes change, that we become also more anti-Semitic, like the Europeans. As we become more tribal, we become more anti-Semitic. Statists must recognize in times of stress, people's altruism and demand for sacrifice goes through the roof. You'd think they'd be a little bit more selfish and in survival mode. I don't quite understand. Statists must recognize, they do recognize that at stress, people's altruism and demand for sacrifice goes through the roof. It does. But they know what the people in power, what the statists know, is how to use that. It's how to manipulate that for their own advantage. How to manipulate that to rally people around them and to go after the groups that they want people to go after. It's part of this issue with anti-Semitism. They realize that in times of stress, people can go after illegal immigrants or the Chinese or blame somebody, Mexicans, whatever, the Jews, for a problem. And they will rally towards that because they're looking for a sacrifice. They're looking to sacrifice somebody. And the more stress there is, the more likely it is that you will go after some group, some tribe that's not yours, to demand a sacrifice from them. So anti-Semitism, stress, altruism, sacrifice, statism, all go together. All go together. Let's see. Do some people now respond to the same music and art? You do, because psychologically we're genetically wired differently to respond to different stimuli. Or they haven't achieved the level of spiritual awareness you have. I think it's neither one of those. I mean, it could be the second. I don't think it's pre-wired, although some aspect of it is pre-wired in the sense that we're pre-wired to be able to understand maybe or to handle music in different ways. Certainly, I can't comprehend music the way Mozart did. But in terms of your response to it, I think that's very different. I don't think you're pre-wired for that. No, our response to different forms of art is a consequence of our sense of life. Our sum of what we feel about the world, what we think about the world, what our sensation is about the world. In a sense, the sum of the conclusions we've come to about life, about you as an individual living in this life, in this world, right here, and your relationship to reality. And different people come to different conclusions about that. And a lot of the response is conditioned on those conclusions. I mean, that's one big thing. Another is some people have accepted social conditioning. They've accepted to be, they just listen to music everybody else does, and that's what all they listen to. They've never heard anything else, and they're not willing to make the effort. Maybe that's spiritual awareness. Some of it's spiritual awareness. Some of it's willingness to open up, willingness to experiment, willingness to expose yourself to new forms of art. And some of it is your soul. I know this is not popular in modern times to talk about, but what kind of soul have you created? What does your soul look like? What is your soul reflected in the world out there? And the music, the art generally that you respond to is a reflection of your soul. It's like you looking in a mirror into what is deep inside of you. And not everybody creates the same soul. And that's not to say I am superior to other people. Different people have different styles, but also different quality of soul. And some people don't make their own soul. Some people just mimic other people. And therefore never made a soul for themselves. And maybe therefore don't have a soul. Right? It's more than just the content of your mind, because it's your emotions. It's how you respond. It's your emotional response to things. It's a combination of all these things. It's who you are. It's what you are. It's your ideas, your conclusions, and the emotional responses to it. It's the whole thing packaged together. It's what and who you are. And what and who you are is different. And some people have good souls. Some people have bad souls. Some people have developed souls. Some people don't. Some people have just drifted. And they're Peter Keating souls, which means other people's souls. They're complete mirrors of other people. And therefore they don't respond to anything because they're empty inside. They have nothing to respond to. Right? Monkeys don't have souls. In a sense that they don't come to conclusions. They don't have free will. They are not conscious of their own mind and their own activity within their mind. They are not conscious of their own thinking, their own emotions, they're not conscious of themselves in the same way, right? We're not just firing neurons. There's something more there. I don't know what it is, but there's something more there. Right? All right, did you see a recent tweets of Dave Rubin criticizing secular liberalism as the cause of West's decline and praising religion as moral guidance? Conservatives are loving it. Yes, I know. I mean, I've known this for a long time, and I think you have too, that Dave Rubin was very influenced by Jordan Peterson. I think completely wrong. I think it's sad to see. I actually was texting with Dave today, and I think he's wrong, and it worries me, and I'm not happy about it, and it saddens me to see, but it is what it is. He's gone. Jordan Peterson, and he traveled with Jordan Peterson. He hung out with him for a long time, and Jordan Peterson is a very powerful presence, and it is what it is. But the Dave Rubin would go all the way to, in a sense, back to origin, to religion is shocking to me, and sad, Your shows are great. These days, they are the highlight of my day, week. And one for a few things keeping me going spiritually, as I am still in lockdown in Britain. and live alone. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I'm glad you're finding, with Mike Wallace, oof, oh my God, she was gorgeous. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, because you say she's gorgeous? Yeah, I think she was gorgeous, but why would she say it's not logical? Why would you say she's not guided by reason? I think we respond to brilliance. We respond to, and you could see her brilliance in those eyes of hers. I don't see why that's not guided by reason. Regarding Howard Rourke's trial, I found why I think Rourke won. A paragraph on page 675 points out he selected the men on the jury, men possibly like him. Yes, I mean, the question of would he be able to select a jury like him today, which was what the question was. But yes, I agree with that. Hey, Ron, I came from a leftist Che Guevara, Fidel Castro admirer to a born-again free marketeer, all thanks to you. Whoa. Wow. Thank you. That is great to hear. And, you know, that's it. I mean, one statement like that wipes out all the criticism that everybody wants. They can come after me all they want. But it's to bring somebody from Che Guevara all the way to free markets and to Ayn Rand, that's what I do this for. Not to please a few people who, you know, have their view about how things should be done. And because I don't bend, I am, you know, the devil incarnate. It's not who I'm trying to please. I'm trying to lure you away from Che Guevara and Fidel Castro, which should be easy, but I'm trying. Right? Could you elaborate on your views on Milton Friedman? Sure. I mean, I think Milton Friedman was brilliant communicator. He had this unbelievable ability to take complex economic ideas and make them really, really simple, really, really clear, right on his feet in a brilliant way. You just watch some of his videos, they're amazing. I think he was a good communicator of economic principles. You know, I think he didn't go all the way. He was not consistent, unfortunately. Only late in life did he come around to the idea that there shouldn't be a Federal Reserve, for example. So he wasn't consistently free market, even in economics. But so I think it was brilliant, and again, I think particularly thinking on his feet, but also the fact that he could write academic papers and be viewed as a Nobel Prize-winning economist by the profession, but also be such a popularizer of economics was a rare ability. But he wrote some terrible things at the same time. One of the worst essays ever written, I think, on economics is written by Milton Friedman on the methodology of economics, on how to do economic theory. And I think it has done an enormous amount of harm to the economics profession. And it's an epistemological issue that one day we'll have to get into. I also think the other thing was that he diminished the importance of morality. I mean, imagine if Milton Friedman had embraced Ayn Rand, at least to the extent of saying, I recognize we need a moral defense of capitalism. Ayn Rand is on the right track. I might not agree with everything, but her attitude is on the right track. The world would be 30, 40 years ahead of where it is today in terms of the influence of Ayn Rand on the world, if he'd done that. I think Thomas Sowell is the same thing. Brilliant and massively flawed. And all of these economists are brilliant and massively flawed, to a large extent because they won't recognize the role of philosophy, morality, and they won't question their altruism, or they won't question the utilitarianism. So that's my view of Milton Friedman. And I wish, in addition to reading Milton Friedman, I'd strongly, strongly recommend reading Atlas Shrugged and reading Capitalism, Not an Ideal, reading Ayn Rand, read Ayn Rand's nonfiction books. Who poses a bigger threat to reason? The rightist who attempt to combine it with faith, or the leftist who conflate reason with emotionalism? I mean, I think they all do. They all, it's the leftists are the bigger threat because they dominate the intellectual high ground, because they're more convincing, because they are everywhere. But as I've said many, many times, it is the rightists who will benefit from it. So it's not that I think the right is worse than the left. If you took a right-wing dictatorship and a left-wing dictatorship, the left-wing dictatorship would be worse than the right-wing. No, they're both equally evil and horrible and awful. The real question is, who is going to lead us? What kind of dictatorship are we likely to get? And what is the path likely to be to that dictatorship? And I think that dictatorship goes through the left and back to the right. I think the dictatorship that will sustain itself in the United States is a right-wing dictatorship, because I think at the end, faith is very powerful in America. Look at Dave Rubin, going all the way in the direction of faith. I think faith is very powerful in America, and ultimately it will win. And when it does, we're toast. I don't think socialism and communism will win in America, even though they're unbelievably destructive. Why do cities that claim to hate economic inequality have the most of it? Seattle, San Francisco, New York City, tons of rich people surrounded by destitute, homeless people. Well, partially because by getting rich and by protecting the rich, which these cities do, they keep the poor poor, they keep the poor homeless. So they make housing massively expensive because they don't build enough, and they don't build enough in order to raise the property values of the rich, among other things, other than environmental and historical reasons, all the excuses they make. But at the end of the day, they're protecting the city from the rich, and what they're causing is the poor to get poorer and poorer, and to become, and to some extent, they're hoping the problem will go somewhere else. So altruists generally in America, leftists generally in America, they don't really want socialism, not if it's going to affect them, not if it's going to affect their standard of living and quality of life. They want it for other people. But they want to stay rich. They want to stay rich. They will accept higher taxes up to the point where they stop being rich. If it stops other people from becoming rich, that's okay with them. But they are socialists for other people. They don't want low-income housing in their neighborhoods. They want low-income housing over there, somewhere. So it's because they claim economic inequality, and they truly believe that inequality is a bad thing. But are they willing to give up their riches for it? No. Not unless everybody does, they say. And even then, they're not really willing to do it. It's not in my backyard. It's a mentality of, I want to protect mine, but my morality says I shouldn't, so I'll inflict my bad ideas on all of you. Are you familiar with the theory that inflation is directly correlated with interest rates and is only indirectly related to supply of money? So interest rates are high, that drives up inflation? I'm not familiar with it, but it doesn't make any sense to me. I think it reverses the relationship between interest rates and money and inflation. So as long as interest rates are low, inflation is low, I guess. I haven't read his theory of interest and prices. Maybe I should. If I read it, I'll comment on it. Johan, what are your thoughts on Eugene Farmer's efficient market hypothesis? I mean, I think as an abstraction, it's very useful. For the most part, it is true. Again, if you understand what it says, most people don't. Efficient market, there's weak efficient, there's strong efficient, and I don't think Farmer believes in strong efficiency without insider trading. As long as there's no insider trading, you can't be strong efficient. It basically says, efficient market theory says, just for those of you not familiar with it, that stock prices reflect the best available information. It's in the price. And therefore, you can't beat the market because the best information is already there. But again, I think all of that is a simplistic view, right? How do markets become efficient? They become efficient by people who gain new information or new knowledge, and there's a difference between information and knowledge. And he would say efficient markets include all information and knowledge. They gain new knowledge or information and then trade on that knowledge and information, which embeds that knowledge and information in prices. That is, they move the prices with the new knowledge and information. And someday, if you guys are interested, I can go through how that works exactly, draw you a little graph in a sense, how that works. And I think for the most part, that's true. Now, the more regulations, the more controls, the more arbitrariness there is around inside information about the definition of it, the less efficient markets are. The more arbitrary printing of money there is, the more arbitrary bailouts there are, the less efficient the market is. And there are periods in which, in a world in which people are not particularly rational, for example, Reddit is a good example of this, where markets deviate dramatically from efficiency because irrational traders come into play and distort the markets dramatically. People ask me, Yaron, why are you pissed off at Reddit and why are you not pissed off at the hedge funds? They manipulate markets because the hedge funds, to the extent they, quote, manipulate markets, are manipulating markets rationally. They're moving prices in a direction consistent with the evidence of reality. What the Reddit people did was flout reality, ignore reality, evade reality, pretend reality doesn't exist. And that's why the stock price is down, 80%, 90% from its peak, and still probably has somewhere around 50% to drop some more, and it will. Because in the end, reality is the guide. Reality is the measure, and stock prices will ultimately, it might take a while, gravitate towards what reality justifies as their price in terms of what their value is. So, Frank, I answered your question. Your question was about the fountainhead, and I answered it. Do you think there's some utility to ritualistic religious behavior? There is something important, I think, about gathering and affirming your shared struggle in the world, a sort of weekly realignment. Yes. So I think so. I used to tell, this is in the 90s, when Leonard Peikoff used to have his radio show, I think it was on Sundays, I told Leonard, I thought that it was like a little bit like an objectivist church, right? Everybody would gather around the radio, or there wasn't an internet back then, so you had to listen on the radio, around the radio and listen to Leonard Peikoff. And it was like this. It was a community. It was kind of a gathering. And I completely agree that gathering to affirm your shared values and the struggle and the thing, the what is going on in the world. I think that's why a lot of you tune in to my show. Some of you are learning stuff. Some of you actually change your mind. Some of you are challenged by the show and want that challenge. And some of you are here to share in reaffirmation, to know that there are other people that share your values, to hear me say it and know that other people are hearing it, and all of that is a value to you. And I think that's great. There was no internet radio in the 90s when Leonard Peikoff did his show. You couldn't listen live on the internet to it. So there is definitely things like that, but it goes broader than that. And I've talked about this in the past in various contexts. So a friend of mine called me up one day years ago, actually a board member at the Ayn Rand Institute, and his son had just died. And he said, this is such a difficult time for me. I don't know what to do. What do we do with the body? What do we say when he's buried? What's the ceremony? What's the ritual? What do we do? How do we express what needs to be expressed? What's important to express? And he said to me, I'm asked to figure this out and think of this at a time where I don't want to think about anything. I can't. I'm mourning, right? This is the worst time in the world for me to plan and to, I need somebody to help me, somebody to do this for me. And I said, yeah, I mean, one day there would be, I'm not going to say rituals, but there would be, maybe ritual is not a bad word. Rituals, standards, help, not a priest, but somebody who help people deal with those kind of situations. Help people compose something to say at a funeral, but also at a wedding, and also at different times and events and things in life. So I think that is something that will evolve. There'll be services provided by, not by the Einstein Institute, God forbid. It shouldn't never be centralized. It should be in the marketplace out there. There would be, and objectivism is in the millions of people. There'll be people who say, I'll specialize in doing these things. Nothing mystical, but just helping people deal with special occurrences, special events, and providing emotional guidance and advice, and putting together different types of ceremonies for different type of events, because ceremonies are important. Ceremonies are fun. They're fun if they're happy ceremonies, but they're again about shared values, about why we're here, about what we're doing. So all of that would be. I definitely think there's a profession there. There's an activity there. Now I think it's too early. There are not enough objectivists. But yeah, I mean, for example, I've done a number of weddings now, so I have a collection of statements, what people want said at their wedding. That is without God and without altruism. And that's powerful. It's powerful stuff. And, I can imagine there being a profession that dealt with these kind of things. All right. Great. Thanks, everybody. Wow, it's already now 50 minutes, and I only did one of the economic issues I wanted to, so we will get back to the others tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. I will see you all tomorrow. David has a quick question. Government officials like printing money because it drives up the value of their assets. Money is forced into assets to avoid devaluation in a saving account. That's part of the reason it's forced into assets. There are other reasons it's forced into assets, because in the 60s and 70s it was forced into consumption and drove up prices. So there's a variety of different mechanisms by which money is guided into particular areas and particular places in the economy and that drive that. So, all right. I never answered your question about Elon Musk. I couldn't find the question. So what was the question? Ask it now. Quick. Okay, I'll remind you, don't forget to like the show before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe. Press the bell. Subscribe to the show if you haven't yet. Don't forget to share it. And, of course, support the show at YaronBrookShow.com/support, at Patreon, on Subscribestar, on Locals. And thank you, again, for all of you who use Super Chat to support the show and to ask me questions. And I'm waiting. He slept at work in a conference room. So, what's the question? He slept at work in a conference room. Oh, yeah. So, I don't know what the question is. Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurs live at work for years. It's what they do. And if you love it, and if it's what your life is about, and there are periods in the life where you do it, you don't do it all the time, and he didn't do it all the time, then yeah, he was dedicated. It's amazing. It's one of the things I love about Elon Musk. Then there's the stuff I don't like about Elon Musk. All right. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow. Not sure exactly time. Watch out on Twitter. Watch out for YouTube. I'll post it. I'll let you know. And yes, still many people have not liked the show, so please like it before you go. Bye, everybody.